Hey everyone, it's Lisa Sweeney here from Business in Heels, and I'm so excited to be joined today by Shondell Labazetta from Life Puzzle. She's the CEO and she does amazing things around leadership. And I have to say, we are super excited because Life Puzzle's come along as a sponsor to support the Gender Equity Awards. And as a gender equity advocate, Shondell is amazing. So, Shondell, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. As you know, I always love to come and have a good conversation with yourself, and welcome to all of the guests that are listening and watching along. My name is Shondell. I am the CEO and co-founder of Life Puzzle, and we're all about transforming individuals, and ultimately we believe that sales is the number one life skill. And just before anyone tunes out or says, I'm not in sales, I want to highlight and say that there are three important sales that we make, and all of them are found in leadership and also in transformation in businesses. The first sale is the sale we make to ourselves about our worth, our value, our confidence. Second sale about being able to influence and lead in a way that we can do so with integrity and bring people along on the journey. And of course, there's our transactional sales, all of things that are very important in leadership and leading people. So I'm really privileged and very excited to not only be here today, but also to be supporting the very, very important topic that we're here to discuss as well today, Lisa.
Yes, well, gender equity is something that we all would love to see some changes in our lifetime, as opposed to waiting 135 years for things to happen. And I know you're really passionate, Shondell, about transformational leadership, and you've seen that as a real key way to actually affect change. So share with us a little bit more about how does that work?
Yeah, I think it's a really important facet of being able to affect change management, affect culture, to ensure that our values and the way in which we want to be seen as individuals and also as contributing individuals within an organization is affecting culture and change within those organizations. And when it comes to transformational leadership, I think one of the key factors that is often missed out in a lot of leadership programs is that there's a focus on how do we transform other people when the leader themselves is not necessarily involved in the transformation. And another key factor associated with that, I always say that self-leadership comes first and then you can lead others. And I think that's really important, because sometimes we can perhaps have incongruencies in our messages as leaders, because we might be asking people to do certain things, and yet we may not be a great example of that for ourselves personally or professionally, for that matter. The other factor I think that's really important in transforming leadership in the space is that we see with large organizations there's often a delay in affecting change, and especially where you've got multi-tiers of leadership involved. Often a decision that's made at the board will take several months, sometimes up to years, to really get that messaging through to the people who are client facing or on the front line. And by the same token, I think there's some really important lessons that come from our team members and people who are actually, contributing to the business, that perhaps maybe sometimes senior leaders don't get an opportunity to get that message early enough to affect that change. So we like to work with all levels of leadership simultaneously to really affect the environment and the individuals together.
Oh, fantastic. It sounds very inclusive, which I think, is a key part of what is making gender equity speed up.
Yes, 100%. And I think that it's really important when we talk about inclusivity, I think it's really important to remember that every single individual, like, we are human beings, and I know that there's a huge emergence of technology and a focus on how can we be more efficient and how can we get, the results and the return on investment. And, we have to remember that we have human beings within our organizations, and they have values and beliefs and amazing contributions that they can make. And so it's important to remember that as we communicate with them, as we get interested in the contributions that they have to make, some which have been communicated, openly, and others that may be little hidden gems that are waiting for permission to emerge. So it's really an important factor to communicate with people and find out, what their thoughts are, what are their contributions, what can they do, and how would they like to contribute as well. Very important.
Yeah, what a great way to harness ideas. And I think today, customers in our teams and the workforce need to be representative of our customers, and the customers all have different needs. And so a lot of these hidden gems are probably nailing it far better than the leadership team can do in isolation. So what a great way to harness it.
Yeah,
So what
thank you.
is
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, keep going.
I was just going to say that, sometimes, and we've got a couple of recent examples where, some of the best business ideas have actually, come from people who are client facing, or they're having
Mm.
conversations with the people who are engaging with the organization, and through some of the mechanics that we've taught around communication and the sharing of ideas, they've been able to highlight something that was, business changing, to the people who can make the decisions, and that's led to, a much more productive and efficient organisation, but at the same time, super profitable changes as well in terms of those ideas, which, for senior leadership, that wasn't really on the radar for them as a thing that needed to be considered. So I think it is important that we're having those conversations, and most importantly, providing the mechanics and the channels by which that people feel that they have permission and safety.
Mm.
The big topic is psychological safety. There are some people that perhaps they'll hold back what they might be thinking, or the contributions that could be made, for fear of judgment, fear of being shot down, sometimes fear of confidence to actually think it's a good idea. And so providing those channels in an organization is so important, because there's just so much untapped potential in the humans that are working within our cultures. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, and it builds that trust and desire to see something greater than you individually. Everyone's rowing in the one direction, as opposed to people trying to hide and keep their secrets and their resources to themselves, which we know is not a productive way to grow businesses. And it's much more profitable for the company, isn't it, to
Yes.
have.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the interesting things around the silos that you just mentioned, in terms of people sort of,
Mm,
sticking to themselves, and, we make the jokes about their little secrets or what have you. But I
mm,
think it's a real issue that many organizations are facing, in the sense that sometimes the overall strategy of the business is communicated, yet the individuals within the business fail to see the connection between their function and how they're actually really adding value to the business as a whole, to the external clients, and actually their part in being able to undertake that strategy. And that sometimes leads to a bit of disillusionment. A
mhm.
feel that emotions come up for the individual, that they're not really making a difference or making an impact. And so, not only is it functional from a profitable perspective, and a multiple and a return on investment perspective, I think it's also important in terms of harmony within the workplace, people enjoying their jobs, connecting to the function that they're undertaking. And work is such a large part of many people's lives.
Mm.
It's important that there's a connection to, how am I showing up for me and my life, as well as how am I showing up for my responsibilities here in the workplace.
Yeah, and you really tapped into that unconscious bias, because quite often it's an assumption that many leaders make, that the person is not so interested and they're not wanting to contribute. And sometimes it's even something that, is inbred into people, that they should be wait to be asked rather than volunteer stuff. So, for managers, being great communicators is a really key thing. I think the more we can unpack our unconscious biases and really understand that. Someone was telling me the other day that, unconscious bias training only works if people keep at it all the time, because of course it's unconscious. And so we kicked off yesterday, I'm excited to say, a quiz. It's a weekly quiz. It only takes a couple of minutes to complete, but it's on lots of different topics, and it's such a great way for people to get across.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. And I think, as you know, Lisa, I'm a master trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, which is an art and science on how people use their language of their mind to affect the results. And a big factor around the way in which we engage is to have people to make the unconscious conscious. And so I think exactly what you
yeah.
said there with relation to the unconscious bias, it is a process of continuing to get interested and get curious and ask questions because often with those situations, we end up leading to confusion, misunderstandings, and that leads to, you know, the impact of negative emotions, and sometimes you know, things unfolding that were unnecessary because it simply was a misunderstanding. And so I think there's a great opportunity for people to really understand that in a better way.
Yeah, fabulous. And, you know, as a leader, you know, trying to manage the negative ramifications of those emotional things takes time. It's exhausting. You know, it's not productive. You're not focused on the proper end goal that the company's trying to achieve. So anything you can do to avoid this. I love the idea of the multi-layer management
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah, and I think just on that, I think one of the key things is that often, particularly with, you know, large multinationals, or when you've got a structure that involves many decision makers in the tree, sometimes what can happen is, you know, there's some great ideas that are happening at this level of leadership, but it's not being translated fast enough, or sometimes you can have those untapped, you know, little gems. And we just had a conversation with an emerging leader the other day, and so working in our emerging leader pathway program, and they were talking about an obstacle that they had with relation to their function, and, you know, how something would be just so much easier if they could roll out this particular step in the operation. And we said, well, you know, have you communicated that to, you know, the people? Like, what would it take to actually make that change? And, oh, you know, I don't have that kind of decision making, and you know, why would they listen to me? There's other people that deal with all of this stuff. And I encourage the person to go and have a conversation and just say, I just had this idea and this is the obstacle, and, you know, obviously propose the solution. And they came back, they called me, and not long after we'd had that conversation, just elated and almost, you know, with almost tears of joy. There was that much excitement. And it's like, I just spoke to this person and they think it's a great project, and now I'm being asked to, you know, head it up. And, you know, so I think there's some really wonderful things that can happen when people are just given that little bit of encouragement, and to get curious about, well, what could be the worst thing that could happen if you actually said, hey, here's an idea that I had, or here's what I'm thinking. And I think sometimes when we've got those structures in place in large multinationals or, you know, big organizations, sometimes obviously they're necessary because we need to have direction and guidance, and there has to be processes, especially, you know, to manage risk and to ensure that things are in place. And in some cases, it can stifle the creativity of the wonderful talent that we do have on board. So I think creating those channels is just such an important approach.
Yeah, and just hearing her success, others will, you know, copy and model it because, you know, nothing bad happened. In fact, she's been, you know, hailed and her idea's gone through to being a project. So how fabulous. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shondell, for coming and joining me and telling me a bit more about transformational leadership and, you know, how you're really making a change. I think anything that can contribute to diversity and inclusion is making huge inroads into speeding up gender equity, which is what we're all about. And of course, we've got lots of other discussions yet to have around gender equity in the workplace. We've got some up and coming webinars on communication bias and why that's holding people back. And of course, we've got the awards winners breakfast coming up on the 20th of March. So lots of exciting things in the pipeline.
Yes, very, very excited. Well, thank you very much for having me here. And I'm so looking forward to, you know, being part of the change that we all want to see. So looking forward to getting involved in a much bigger way. Thank you.
Thanks, Shondell. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lisa.